Good evening, YouTube. Today is June 1st, 2020. My, what an interesting few days it's been. So, not only do we have this national issue we're dealing with since March or February, the whole being sick thing, now it seems on top of the economy taking a dump through all the lockdowns and state shutdowns. Now we have the Minnesota riots from Minneapolis spreading all over the country. So, I don't know how many people are familiar with prepping videos. I'm sure a lot more now than used to be. But we always used to think in the prepping community that it might be one thing or another. There were some enlightened individuals like Canadian Preparedness, Canadian Prepper, City Prepping, people like that, Such 00. It was only a matter of time before an economic crisis or a pandemic hit. But it's interesting that, those individuals, they always thought it's only going to be the beginning, because it's never one thing that takes down or complicates a situation. It's always that cascading effect. So whatever you were planning for, whatever your pet scenario was, it was always prudent to plan for everything. And some people are like, well, how can you plan for everything? Food, water, medicine, means of self-defense. Then you branch out, make sure you have some way to get backup power, should you need it. Some way to, filter water if your house water stops working for some reason. So not only do we have a global health situation that sparked economic disaster in this country and others, now we have civil unrest and rioting. And yes, I'm wearing my SPFNP AK Indian shirt. Go Survival Prepping for Normal People. Love that guy's channel. I thought I was lucky in the fact that I lived in a city where we don't really have a whole lot of protests. And, when the Ferguson riots occurred, the Baltimore riots, stuff like that, never really occurred here. Well, now, this George Floyd situation, which I think is abhorrent, that never should have happened at all. But now there's rioting in my area. It's been peaceful. There's protests. There's no riots. There's no looting that I'm aware of, or, people acting crazy. Thankfully. But this situation has struck such a nerve with people because it was blatant, I'll call it murder. And people have been cooped up, unable to do anything, go anywhere. And just as we're starting to pull through and states are just starting to open back up, race riots from a white officer killing an unarmed black man. I'd like to think that all the rioting is unwarranted. Definitely the looting is unwarranted. There's never a reason to loot. There's always a reason to protest something peacefully, and I totally agree with everyone's right to protest. But man, this situation, it's uniting people against their local governments like I haven't seen in my lifetime. Hopefully, it just kind of resolves itself once this trial of the officer that was responsible for this man's death. But that brings me to thinking, like, what if this guy's acquitted? Like, right now, these riots are in addition to the officer being arrested. What if he's acquitted? How bad could that get? I mean, we have Trump saying that, he's going to send in heavily armed soldiers if the states can't get their shit together. Pardon my French. I don't know if that's a good idea. One, from a separation of power thing, states versus the federal. But also, people are protesting and rioting against police brutality and abuse of force. So now you want to send in more people who are more heavily armed to disperse the crowds, which I get it. Riot's not a good idea. But then there's this seesaw back and forth between, well, we've got to do the show of force because people are rioting and looting. Okay. Well, then the rioting and looting, again, never a good reason for looting, but then the rioting could potentially ratchet up. I mean, cops are getting drugged through the streets. I read a news article where apparently in Chicago the radios were hacked, the police radios were hacked. Cars getting set on fire, precincts being set on fire. Well, this is not a sign of a healthy country. I mean, this is stuff you'd expect to see in some place like, Africa, quite honestly, or some third world country. But, it's a sign of the times. So what happens when the government ratchets up their response and starts using hopefully less than lethal force, like more tear gas, more rubber bullets? And then the rioters ratchet up their response. And then the government has to ratchet up their response to that. And so on and so forth. Man, I've got the puppy pack here. Just hanging out in the backyard after working out here today. I'm just thinking, it's interesting. Some people are saying, well, we'll just crash the economy and that'll get Trump out of the election or not elected again. Well, that didn't work because apparently people love Trump. Go Trump. Now let's start the race wars. I think there was that meme on the internet with George Soros. It's like, the economy didn't work. Let's start the race wars. That's an interesting idea because, granted, there's construction projects going on all over the country at any one time, but where are all these bricks coming from that rioters are throwing? Like, just pallets of bricks laying around everywhere? I don't know. I don't live in a big city, so maybe there are. Man, this has the potential to get really out of control for a number of reasons. One, you've got the health aspect of it. Two, you've got the social disobedience and social unrest aspect of it. And then you have the government's response. And understandably so, the government's response has to be strong in order to quell the social unrest. But people were really ticked off about the whole government's response to the global health issue. There was protests, mostly peaceful, by people on the conservative side, Second Amendment side, going to the Capitol, protesting with their firearms. Also in Virginia wanted to pass legislation taking certain firearms away, so there was a massive protest there. What happens when the government oversteps? And I don't mean oversteps in the terms of like trying to put this situation down and resolve it, but someone's afraid, either one of the cops one of the protesters, whatever. Somebody's scared, and when people are scared, they do silly things that they wouldn't normally do, and a protester gets shot. Not by rubber bullets, I mean actual, like, lethal force. Then what happens? I hope it doesn't happen, but I can see the potential for stuff going south. I don't know. I don't have any plans to go to a protest or anything like that. I'm not even going to go to watch. Don't want to be involved with that at all. But if stuff goes south and, the rioting gets worse, people need to be prepared to defend their property and their lives. I'm not saying go out and pick a fight. Never go pick a fight. But, if the riots occur in your neighborhood and you don't have anywhere to go, it's your responsibility to defend your life and the lives of the ones you care about. A lot of people will say, oh, you don't need firearms, you don't need this, you don't need that, you don't need an AR-15, you don't need an AK-47 variant. It's easy to say that from the comfort of your own home when no one's rioting outside your house, setting stuff on fire, potentially threatening your life. So we'll see how this all plays out, but if you have a gun, good, excellent, you're ahead of the curve. Do you know how to use it? There's a video of some protester, I think it was in New York or Chicago, somewhere, I'm not really sure where, but protester breaks into a cop car, takes their AR rifle, and he's all big and bad, he's got it. Dude walks up, pistol drawn, just totally takes the gun from him. And this guy had training. The guy that took the gun from the guy, he had training. He cleared that gun, made it, safe, like he's done it a million times. So either he's ex-military or law enforcement. And good for him. Good for him for doing that, Who knows what would have happened if that protester just started walking around and gets scared and starts launching off shots. I don't know. Interesting. So, I hope everyone is safe. Stay safe. If you haven't made plans through any of this, you really should start considering making sure you've got food and water, a means of backup power, a means of self-defense. There's this old saying, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Kind of like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you need protection, the cops are not going to come racing to your protection because they're already dealing with other riots. They have to triage which sections of the city or town to protect and which ones to just let go. We'll see. Stay safe. Take care. Talk to you later.